Maya Rodriguez had always been different from the other women in Millbrook, a small conservative town where everyone knew everyone else's business. At 28, she worked as a mechanic at Joe's auto shop, her hands permanently stained with grease despite scrubbing them raw every night. The tattoos that covered her arms told stories that most people in town would never understand, and they certainly didn't try to. The mockery began the moment she stepped into Peterson's grocery store that Tuesday morning. She needed milk for her coffee and some bread for lunch, simple things that shouldn't have required courage. But, in Millbrook, everything required courage when you looked like Maya. Her dark hair was pulled back in a messy bun, revealing the intricate ink that climbed up her neck, and she wore her usual work clothes, torn jeans and a tank top that showed the elaborate designs covering her shoulders and arms. "Look what the cat dragged in," whispered Margaret Peterson from behind the counter, loud enough for half the store to hear. The elderly woman's voice carried the particular brand of disdain that small-town gossips had perfected over decades. "I don't know why Joe keeps that girl around. She's bad for business, looking like that." Maya kept her eyes down, grabbing a gallon of milk from the cooler. She had learned long ago that responding only made things worse. The whispers followed her through the narrow aisles like shadows, each comment cutting deeper than the last. "My daughter goes to the high school," said another voice, belonging to Carol Martinez, a woman Maya recognized from the bank. "I told her to stay away from girls like that. Tattoos are a sign of a troubled past, you know. Probably drugs, maybe worse." The assumption stung because they were so far from the truth, but Maya had stopped trying to correct people years ago. She reached for a loaf of bread, her movements careful and deliberate. Every tattoo on her body had been chosen with purpose, each one a chapter in a story that began long before she arrived in Millbrook 3 years ago. "I heard she's got them all over," Margaret continued, her voice dropping to what she probably thought was a whisper. "Even on her back. Decent women don't do things like that to themselves. Makes you wonder what kind of family raised her." Maya's hand froze on the bread bag. Family. If they only knew the truth about her family, about why she was really here in this judgmental little town, working a job that barely paid her bills and living in a tiny apartment above the Chinese restaurant. But they didn't want to know the truth. They preferred their assumptions, their neat little boxes that helped them feel superior. She made her way to the counter, placing her items down with practiced calm. Margaret rang up her purchases with obvious distaste, handling Maya's money as if it might contaminate her. The total was $8.37, money Maya had earned through honest work, through skills that these people couldn't even comprehend. "Have a blessed day," Margaret said, the words dripping with false politeness. It was her way of dismissing Maya while simultaneously claiming the moral high ground. Outside the store, Maya leaned against her motorcycle, another source of neighborhood disapproval, and took a deep breath. The late morning sun felt good on her face, a small comfort in a world that seemed determined to misunderstand her. She had chosen this life, this anonymity, for reasons that went deeper than anyone in Millbrook could imagine. The tattoo on her back, the one they whispered about but had never actually seen, was hidden beneath her tank top. It was the most important one of all, the one that told the story of who she really was and why she had given up everything to be here, in this place where she was treated like a pariah. As she started her bike, Maya caught sight of her reflection in the store window. The woman looking back at her was strong, weathered by experiences that would have broken most people. The tattoos they mocked were badges of honor, symbols of survival, of service, of sacrifice. But she couldn't tell them that. Not yet. Maybe not ever. The engine roared to life, and Maya pulled out of the parking lot, leaving behind another day of judgment and misunderstanding. She had work to do at the shop, cars to fix, and honest living to earn. Let them whisper and speculate. Let them make their assumptions about the tattooed woman who didn't fit their narrow definition of respectability. What they didn't know couldn't hurt them, but it might surprise them. Maya Rodriguez carried secrets that would challenge everything this small town thought they knew about strength, about service, about what it truly meant to be a hero. The tattoo on her back was just the beginning of a story that would eventually force Millbrook to confront its own prejudices and preconceptions. But, for now, she would continue to be their outcast, their cautionary tale, their example of everything they believed a woman shouldn't be. She had been hiding in plain sight for 3 years, and she could continue hiding for as long as necessary. The truth would reveal itself when it was ready, and not a moment before. The road back to the auto shop stretched ahead of her, familiar and comforting. This was her life now, simple, quiet, and far removed from the chaos she had left behind. The people of Millbrook saw only the surface, the tattoos and the motorcycle and the unconventional appearance. They couldn't see the discipline, the training, the years of service that had shaped her into the person she was today. Maya Rodriguez was exactly where she needed to be, even if nobody understood why. The mockery hurt, but it was a small price to pay for the peace she had found in this unlikely place. Sometimes the best hiding spots were in plain sight, surrounded by people who were too distracted by their own judgments to see what was really there. The tattoo on her back told a story of honor, but that story would remain hidden until the day came when hiding was no longer an option. Until then, she would endure their whispers, their assumptions, their casual cruelty. She was stronger than they knew, more resilient than they could imagine, and more valuable to their community than any of them would ever guess. But Maya knew something they didn't: secrets had a way of revealing themselves when people least expected it. And when that day came, everything would change. 3 weeks after the grocery store incident, Maya found herself facing the worst kind of situation Millbrook had to offer. It was a sweltering Thursday afternoon when the screaming started. She was under the hood of a 1998 Honda Civic, diagnosing a persistent engine knock, when the sound of pure terror cut through the steady hum of the garage. The screams were coming from the elementary school across the street. Maya dropped her wrench and ran outside, her heart pounding with a familiar adrenaline that she hadn't felt in 3 years. Other people were gathering on the sidewalk, pointing and talking in hushed, worried voices, but nobody was moving toward the school. "Someone's got a gun in there," said Bill Murphy, the mailman, his face pale with shock. "I saw a man go in through the side entrance. He had something in his hands, looked like trouble." Maya's training kicked in immediately. While others stood frozen by fear and uncertainty, she was already analyzing the situation, calculating risks, planning responses. The muscle memory was still there, buried under 3 years of deliberately ordinary life but ready to surface when needed. "Has anyone called the police?" she asked, scanning the crowd of gathering neighbors. "Mrs. Henderson called them," said another voice. "But they said it might take 20 minutes to get here from the county seat. The Millbrook officer is handling a car accident on the other side of town." 20 minutes. Maya knew that 20 minutes could be a lifetime in a situation like this. She could hear more screaming now, children's voices mixed with adults, the sound of chaos and panic that she had heard before in places far from this quiet American town. Without thinking, Maya started walking toward the school. Behind her, someone called out, "Where are you going? You can't go in there." But Maya wasn't listening to them anymore. She was listening to something deeper, something that had been shaped by years of training and experience that these people couldn't comprehend. The tattooed mechanic they mocked and whispered about was transforming before their eyes into something else entirely, something they had never seen before. The side entrance to the school was propped open, probably how the intruder had gotten in. Maya could hear voices from inside, angry shouting mixed with crying. She moved carefully, quietly, using skills that came back to her as naturally as breathing. The hallways were eerily empty, but she could follow the sounds to determine where everyone had gathered. The main office area seemed to be the center of the disturbance. Maya crept closer, staying low, using the lockers and doorways for cover. Through a window in the office door, she could see a man holding what looked like a knife, gesturing wildly at a group of terrified school employees and several children who had apparently been visiting the office when he arrived. Maya's mind raced through options and scenarios. The man appeared to be alone, which was good. He seemed agitated but not completely out of control, which meant there might be a chance to de-escalate the situation. She had dealt with similar situations before, in places where the stakes were much higher and the resources much fewer. Moving closer, she could hear what the man was saying. He was demanding money, talking about bills he couldn't pay, mentioning a foreclosure notice and a family that was about to be homeless. This wasn't a planned attack by a dangerous criminal, this was a desperate man who had run out of options and made a terrible decision. Maya knew she had to act. The police were still 15 minutes away, and desperate people did unpredictable things when they felt cornered. She had seen too many situations spiral out of control because nobody was willing to take the first step toward resolution. Taking a deep breath, Maya stepped into the doorway of the office. The man spun toward her, raising the knife, his eyes wild with fear and desperation. The school employees and children behind him gasped, probably expecting the worst. "Hey there," Maya said, her voice calm and steady, using the tone she had perfected in dozens of similar situations. "Looks like you're having a really bad day. Want to talk about it?" The man stared at her, clearly not expecting this response. Maya kept her hands visible, her posture non-threatening, everything about her body language designed to reduce tension rather than escalate it. "Who are you?" the man demanded. "You're not supposed to be here." "You're right, I'm not," Maya agreed. "I'm just someone who knows what it's like when everything goes wrong all at once. I'm Maya." "What's your name?" "Don't come any closer," the man warned, but his voice was already less aggressive, more confused than angry. "I won't," Maya promised. "I'm going to stay right here. But I'm wondering if maybe we can figure this out together. Because I'm betting you didn't wake up this morning planning to be here, holding that knife, scaring these kids." Outside, Maya could hear more sirens approaching. The local police officer must have finished with his other call, and probably backup was coming from the county. That was both good and bad. Good because help was coming, bad because the arrival of multiple officers could spook the man into doing something irreversible. "They're coming for me," the man said, hearing the same sirens. "It's over. Everything's over." "It doesn't have to be," Maya said firmly. "But we need to get these people out of here first. They don't have anything to do with whatever's going wrong in your life. Let's get them somewhere safe, and then we can talk about what's really happening here." The man looked at the terrified faces around him, as if seeing them clearly for the first time. Maya could see the exact moment when the reality of what he was doing hit him, when he realized he had crossed a line he never intended to cross. "I never wanted to hurt anybody," he whispered. "I just don't know what else to do. They're taking my house. My kids won't have anywhere to live." "I hear you," Maya said. "And I believe you don't want to hurt anyone. So let's make sure that doesn't happen. Let these folks leave, and then we can work on the real problem." The negotiations continued for another 10 minutes, Maya using every technique she had learned for dealing with desperate people in impossible situations. She kept her voice steady, her demeanor calm, constantly working to build trust and reduce tension. When the police finally arrived, they found Maya sitting across from the man in the school office, both of them talking quietly while the knife lay on the desk between them. The hostages had been released, the children were safe, and what could have been a tragedy had been transformed into something manageable. As the officers took the man into custody, gently, because Maya had convinced them that he needed help more than punishment, the crowd that had gathered outside stared at her in amazement. This was not the tattooed troublemaker they thought they knew. This was someone else entirely, someone who had just demonstrated skills and courage that none of them possessed. But Maya was already walking away, heading back to the auto shop, trying to return to the anonymous life she had carefully constructed. She had done what needed to be done, nothing more, nothing less. The fact that it had revealed capabilities that contradicted everything Millbrook thought they knew about her was not something she was ready to address. Behind her, the whispers were starting again. But this time, they were different. This time, they were filled with confusion, curiosity, and the beginning of something that might eventually become respect. Officer Jake Morrison had been a cop for 15 years, and he had never seen anything quite like what had happened at the elementary school. He sat in his patrol car outside Joe's auto shop, trying to make sense of what he had witnessed. Maya Rodriguez, the woman everyone in town dismissed as a troublemaker, had just defused a potentially deadly situation with skills that seemed to come from extensive training and experience. Jake had arrived at the school expecting the worst. Hostage situations rarely ended well, especially when they involved children and desperate people with weapons. But, instead of chaos and violence, he had found Maya sitting calmly with the suspect, having somehow convinced him to surrender without anyone getting hurt. The techniques she had used were textbook perfect, crisis negotiation skills that Jake recognized from his own training courses. But those weren't skills you picked up working as a mechanic. They were skills developed through intensive training and real-world experience in high-stress situations. After processing the scene and getting the suspect safely to the county jail for evaluation and help, Jake had tried to talk to Maya. But she had already disappeared back into the garage, returning to her work as if nothing extraordinary had happened. When he finally tracked her down, she was back under the hood of the Honda Civic, wrench in hand, as if the morning's events had been just another routine interruption. "Maya," Jake called out as he approached her workstation. "I was hoping we could talk for a minute." She looked up, her face carefully neutral. "About what, Officer Morrison?" "About what happened at the school today." "About how you knew exactly what to do in that situation." Maya wiped her hands on a rag, considering her response. "Someone needed help. I helped. That's all there is to it." But Jake wasn't satisfied with that explanation. "That wasn't just helping, Maya. That was professional-level crisis intervention. Those are specialized skills that take years to develop. Where did you learn how to do that?" For a moment, Maya's carefully maintained composure flickered. Jake caught a glimpse of something in her eyes, pain, maybe, or loss. Something that spoke of experiences far beyond what most people in Millbrook had ever faced. "Does it matter?" she asked finally. "The situation is resolved. No one got hurt. Isn't that what's important?" Jake studied her face, noting details he had never paid attention to before. The way she held herself, the controlled way she moved, the alertness in her eyes that never seemed to completely relax. These weren't the characteristics of someone who had lived an ordinary life. "The town's talking," Jake said carefully. "People are curious about you now in a way they weren't before. Some of them are starting to ask questions about who you really are." "I'm a mechanic," Maya said firmly. "I fix cars. I pay my taxes. I mind my own business. That should be enough." But Jake could see that it wasn't going to be enough anymore. The incident at the school had changed something fundamental in how the town perceived Maya. The whispers that had once been dismissive were now speculative. People were beginning to realize that they had made assumptions about someone they didn't actually know at all. Over the next few days, the questions multiplied. Jake found himself fielding calls from curious residents who wanted to know more about the mysterious woman who had saved their children. Some of the same people who had mocked Maya's appearance were now praising her courage and asking why someone with her obvious skills was working as a mechanic in their small town. Margaret Peterson, the grocery store owner who had been particularly cruel in her comments about Maya, stopped by the police station on Friday afternoon. She looked uncomfortable, shifting nervously as she tried to find the right words. "Officer Morrison," she began hesitantly, "I've been thinking about what happened at the school. About that Rodriguez girl." "What about her?" Jake asked. "Well, I may have been hasty in my judgment of her. The way she handled that situation, it was remarkable. I'm wondering if maybe there's more to her story than we realized." Jake could have pointed out that Margaret's hasty judgment had been ongoing for 3 years, but he held his tongue. At least she was beginning to question her assumptions. "Have you considered talking to Maya directly?" Jake suggested. Margaret looked shocked at the idea. "Oh, I couldn't do that. After the things I've said. But I was wondering if you might know anything about her background. Where she came from, what she did before she came here." Jake had been wondering the same thing. That evening, he decided to do some investigating of his own. Maya Rodriguez wasn't an uncommon name, but, combined with her obvious skills and the few details he had gathered, he might be able to piece together some information. It took him several hours of searching through various databases and records, but eventually he found something that made him sit back in his chair, staring at the screen in amazement. Maya Rodriguez, age 28, formerly of San Diego, California. Military service record, United States Marine Corps, Military Police, 2 tours in Afghanistan, decorated for valor under fire, specialized training in crisis negotiation and hostage rescue. The pieces suddenly fell into place. The tattoos that everyone had assumed were signs of rebellion were actually military commemoratives. The confidence under pressure, the negotiation skills, the way she seemed to analyze situations before acting, it all made perfect sense now. But the records also showed something else. Maya had left the military 3 years ago after a traumatic incident involving the death of her partner during a rescue operation. She had received an honorable discharge and, apparently, disappeared into civilian life, choosing anonymity over the recognition her service deserved. Jake realized he was sitting on information that would completely change how Millbrook viewed Maya Rodriguez. But he also realized that sharing it wasn't his decision to make. Maya had chosen to keep her past private for reasons that were probably more complex than anyone in town could understand. The next morning, Jake drove to the auto shop again. Maya was working on a truck engine, her movements precise and efficient. When she saw him approaching, she straightened up with a slightly wary expression. "Officer Morrison. Twice in 1 week. People are going to start talking." "People are already talking," Jake said. "But I wanted you to know that your secret is safe with me." Maya's hands stilled on her wrench. "I don't know what you mean." "I think you do," Jake said gently. "Semper Fi, Maya." The Latin phrase, the Marine Corps motto, hung in the air between them. Maya's shoulders sagged slightly, as if a weight she had been carrying for years had suddenly shifted. "How long have you known?" she asked quietly. "Since last night. I did some research after what happened at the school. Your service record is impressive." Maya set down her wrench and turned to face him fully. "What are you going to do with that information?" "Nothing," Jake said immediately. "It's your story to tell, if and when you choose to tell it. But I want you to know that some people in this town are starting to see you differently. What you did at the school opened their eyes." "I don't want to be seen differently," Maya said. "I came here to disappear, to be ordinary. I just want to fix cars and live quietly." "I understand that," Jake said. "And I respect it. But sometimes life doesn't let us stay hidden. Sometimes circumstances force us to be who we really are, whether we want to or not." Maya was quiet for a long moment, staring at her hands. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft but steady. "I lost someone over there. My partner, my best friend. She died because I made a call that turned out to be wrong. I couldn't save her, and I couldn't live with the weight of everyone calling me a hero afterward. So I came here, to a place where nobody knew me, where I could just be nobody special." "But you are special," Jake said. "What you did at the school proved that. You saved lives, Maya. Just like you did in Afghanistan." "One time doesn't make up for the time I failed," Maya replied. Jake wanted to argue with her, to tell her that wasn't how heroism worked, but he could see that this was a conversation Maya wasn't ready to have. Instead, he simply nodded. "If you ever need anything," he said, "if anyone gives you trouble or if you just need someone to talk to who understands, you know where to find me." As he walked back to his patrol car, Jake reflected on the complexity of the human experience. Maya Rodriguez was a war hero hiding in plain sight, carrying grief and guilt that had driven her to seek anonymity in a small town that had judged her based on her appearance alone. But secrets had a way of revealing themselves, and Jake had a feeling that Maya's story was far from over. The incident at the school was just the beginning of something that would eventually force both Maya and the town of Millbrook to confront the truth about heroism, sacrifice, and the courage it takes to start over. The moment of truth came 6 weeks later, on a humid Saturday morning when Maya thought she was finally returning to her quiet, anonymous life. The incident at the school had gradually faded from daily conversation, and people had mostly stopped staring at her when she walked down the street. She was back under car hoods, back to being invisible, exactly how she wanted it. She was working alone at the shop, trying to diagnose a persistent electrical problem in an old Ford pickup, when she heard voices outside. Through the garage door, she could see a small crowd gathering on the sidewalk. At the center of the group was a woman she didn't recognize, someone in an expensive-looking suit who clearly wasn't from Millbrook. Maya wiped her hands and walked to the entrance, curious despite herself. The woman was talking to Margaret Peterson and several other townspeople, holding what looked like official documents and asking questions. "Excuse me," the woman called out when she saw Maya. "Are you Maya Rodriguez?" Maya's stomach dropped. This was exactly the kind of attention she had been trying to avoid for 3 years. "Who's asking?" The woman approached with a professional smile. "My name is Sarah Chen, I'm a reporter with the San Diego Tribune. I'm working on a follow-up story about military veterans who have transitioned to civilian life. Your name came up in connection with an incident at an elementary school here in Millbrook." "I don't talk to reporters," Maya said immediately, turning to head back into the garage. "Ms. Rodriguez, please," Sarah Chen called after her. "I know about your service record. I know what happened in Afghanistan, with Sergeant Lisa Martinez. I know why you left the military." Maya stopped walking. The mention of Lisa's name felt like a physical blow, bringing back memories she had worked so hard to bury. She turned slowly, her face pale but controlled. "You don't know anything about what happened over there," Maya said quietly. "I know that you saved 12 hostages in a rescue operation that went wrong," Sarah Chen continued. "I know that Sergeant Martinez was killed while trying to extract civilians from a compromised building. I know that you blamed yourself for her death, even though the official investigation cleared you of any wrongdoing." The small crowd that had gathered was listening to every word, their faces reflecting growing amazement. Maya could see Margaret Peterson's expression change from curiosity to shock to something that might have been shame. "I also know," Sarah Chen went on, "that you turned down a Medal of Honor because you said you didn't deserve recognition for a mission where someone died." Maya felt the walls she had built around her new life beginning to crumble. "What do you want from me?" "I want to tell your story," Sarah said. "Not just about what happened in Afghanistan, but about what you've been doing since. About how a decorated Marine ended up working as a mechanic in a small town in Alabama, and about what happened at the elementary school 6 weeks ago." "There's no story to tell," Maya insisted, but her voice lacked conviction. Sarah Chen pulled out a tablet and showed Maya the screen. It displayed a military photograph, Maya in dress blues, younger, standing next to a woman with kind eyes and a warm smile. "Lisa Martinez. This is the woman you've been carrying on your back," Sarah said gently. "Literally." Maya stared at the photograph, memories flooding back despite her efforts to keep them at bay. The crowd around them had grown larger, and she could see Officer Morrison pushing through the group, his face concerned. "The tattoo on your back," Sarah Chen continued. "It's a memorial to Sergeant Martinez, isn't it? Her name, her service dates, maybe the coordinates of the place where she died?" Maya's composure finally broke. Tears she had been holding back for 3 years began to fall, and she sank down onto a nearby crate, her shoulders shaking with suppressed grief. "She was going to be married," Maya whispered. "She had a wedding dress picked out, a venue booked. She was going to have the life I could never give her." The confession hung in the air, revealing another layer of Maya's pain. Officer Morrison stepped forward, positioning himself protectively near Maya while giving the reporter a warning look. "That's enough," he said firmly. "She doesn't have to do this." But Maya looked up at the faces surrounding her, townspeople who had judged her, mocked her, dismissed her for 3 years. People who were now seeing her clearly for the first time. "Yes, I do," she said, standing up slowly. "Maybe it's time." Maya reached for the hem of her tank top and pulled it over her head, revealing the intricate tattoo that covered most of her back. The crowd gasped collectively. It wasn't what they had expected, not some random design or rebellious statement. It was a masterpiece of memorial art. At the center was a portrait of Lisa Martinez, rendered in stunning detail. Around it were military insignia, coordinates, dates of service, and a scroll with the names of all the civilians they had saved together. At the bottom, in elegant script, were the words "Until Valhalla, my love." "Lisa and I were together for 2 years," Maya said, her voice growing stronger as she spoke. "We served together, we lived together, we planned a future together. The night she died, I was supposed to be with her in that building. I was supposed to be the one who went in first. But I made a command decision to send her instead because I thought the entry point she was covering was safer." Margaret Peterson had tears in her eyes. "Oh, honey," she whispered. "The building collapsed from an explosion we didn't know was coming," Maya continued. "Lisa was trapped inside with 2 civilian hostages. She managed to get them out, but she didn't make it out herself. The last thing she said over the radio was that she loved me and that she was proud to serve with me." Maya pulled her shirt back on, facing the crowd with dignity despite her tears. "I came here because I couldn't stand being called a hero for a mission where the person I loved most in the world died. Every tattoo on my body tells part of our story, the places we served, the people we saved, the love we shared. But the one on my back is just for her." Sarah Chen had been taking notes, but she stopped writing and looked at Maya with genuine compassion. "The incident at the school, you used the same negotiation techniques you used in Afghanistan, didn't you?" Maya nodded. "When I saw those children in danger, I couldn't just stand by. Lisa always said that once you're trained to help people, you can never really turn that off." She was right. Officer Morrison stepped forward. "Maya, I want you to know that this town owes you an apology. And, more than that, we owe you our thanks." One by one, the townspeople began to approach Maya. Margaret Peterson was first, her face streaked with tears of shame and regret. "I am so sorry," she said, reaching for Maya's hands. "I judged you without knowing anything about who you really are. You're a hero, and I treated you like you were beneath me. I'll never forgive myself for that." Others followed, each offering their own apologies and expressions of gratitude. The man whose car Maya had been working on stepped forward and refused to let her finish the job for free. "A war hero doesn't work for free in my book," he said firmly. Over the following weeks, everything changed in Millbrook. Maya's story spread throughout the town and beyond, eventually reaching national news outlets. But, rather than fleeing from the attention, Maya found herself embracing a new role in the community. She started volunteering at the elementary school, teaching children about service and sacrifice. She began speaking at Veterans Day ceremonies and helping other veterans who were struggling with their transition to civilian life. Most importantly, she finally allowed herself to be seen for who she really was. The auto shop became a gathering place for veterans from throughout the region, drawn by Maya's story and her willingness to listen to their own struggles. She still fixed cars, but she also fixed something else, the broken connection between her past and her present. Officer Morrison became one of her closest friends, and together they developed a program to help other veterans find their place in small-town America. Sarah Chen's article won a National Journalism Award and helped launch a foundation that supported military families dealing with loss. But perhaps the most significant change was in Maya herself. She finally allowed herself to grieve properly for Lisa, to honor her memory not by hiding but by living the kind of life that Lisa would have wanted for her. The tattoos that had once been sources of shame became badges of honor that she wore proudly. Maya Rodriguez had spent 3 years trying to disappear, trying to become nobody special. But, in the end, she learned that some people are meant to be seen, meant to make a difference, meant to carry the stories of those who came before them. The woman they had made fun of until Officer Morrison noticed the tattoo on her back was exactly who Millbrook needed her to be, a hero who had found her way home, carrying the love and memory of another hero with her every step of the way. In the end, Maya realized that Lisa had been right about something else, too. Once you know how to serve, once you understand what it means to put others before yourself, you can never really stop. You can only choose how and where to continue serving. Maya Rodriguez chose to serve in Millbrook, Alabama, fixing cars and fixing lives, carrying her past with pride and building a future worthy of the woman who had given everything for the people she loved. The tattoo on her back was no longer a burden to be hidden, it was a promise to be lived every single day.